Usually, when we talk about the Palestinian-Israeli conflict, we speak about the negotiations, if they were fruitful, if they failed, what does Israel want, what do Palestinians want, can the maximum that Israel suggests be suitable for the minimum that the Palestinians are agreed to get in order to give peace to Israel. But I would suggest a different lens. And if I cut these lenses into two, I can say that the international community looks at the conflict sometimes as a bilateral problem. It means you Palestinians, you Israelis, it is like your problem, try to solve it. Or it can look at the Palestinian-Israeli conflict as a key to stability all over the Middle East. So, from 1967, when the West Bank and Gaza were occupied by Israel, until 2011, we can say that the world was looking at the Palestinian-Israeli conflict not only as a bilateral conflict, but also as a key to curing the big problems of West Asia, of the Middle East. And we can see it in the Madrid conference, Oslo Accords, the New Middle East Shimon Peres initiative. We even see that very shortly after the PLO and Israel were negotiating peace, Rabin, Peres, and Yasser Arafat, they received the Peace Nobel Prize, although the outcome of the negotiations was uncertain because this conflict was so important in the paradigm that was there, that even the very fact that there are negotiations between the Palestinians and Israelis, even if we do not know the outcomes, even this was enough to get the Nobel Peace Prize. This has changed after the Arab Spring. In December 2010, in Tunisia, in Egypt, we saw big demonstrations, and we saw leaders who are simply running away and replaced by the people who went to the streets. We saw ISIS in Syria, in Iraq. We saw the ISIS terrorism in Europe, in other places. Gradually, the new paradigm was that the Palestinian issue was not the big reason why the Middle East became in such a turmoil, why in the Middle East from North Africa up to Syria, we saw that we saw new order instead of the old order that we were all used to. And then the damage was that in a way, the international community cared much less about the Palestinian-Israeli conflict because it was seen as at the periphery of the big problems of the Middle East and North Africa. It was not seen as a key to solutions in other places. Now, we can see that also India's diplomatic approach can illustrate this because we had two prime ministers from the BJP, Vajpayee and Modi. Vajpayee both as foreign minister in 77 to 79, if I'm not wrong, and later on in his 6 years as a prime minister up to 2004. In a way, he was sometimes pro-Palestinian, sometimes very balanced. He was, of course, not anti-Israeli. He had deep sympathy to Israel, but still, his policy was very different from the policy that we saw later from Modi, a decade later in 2014. So one could claim that this is because Modi is a more Hindutva guy, more connected to the RSS. Maybe he's anti-Muslim while Vajpayee was more bipartisan. I do not wish to argue with these ideas, but I still want to claim that the main reason for the difference between the Vajpayee policy and the Modi policy is that after 2011, after the Arab Spring, we had a consensus that the old paradigm that the Palestinian-Israeli wound is the big wound of the Middle East, it was not valid anymore. And when Modi became prime minister in 2014, it was very easy for him to have a big visit to Israel and to show all his affection to Israel, and then to have a quite a low-key visit to Ramallah, to the West Bank, just to show that India still supports the two-state solution and so on. Even then, if we read carefully what was said in 2017, Jerusalem was no longer mentioned as the future capital of the Palestinian state. Now, we had again, 1 year back, a change of this paradigm. The massacre of Hamas on October 7th in the Gaza-Israel border created a big shock. But it also created a new thinking that we will not be able to get stability in the Middle East if the Palestinians and the Israelis will not sit next to the same table and approach peace. And once this was the new paradigm, we saw that, let's say, initiatives like IMEC, it was deeply frozen because nobody really believed that we can make this corridor from Mumbai to Western Europe via Emirates, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Israel, Greece, and so on, if we don't see a peace between the Palestinians and the Israelis. It was, and if we compare it to the situation before October 2023, we will see that during the Abraham Accords, during the G20, when IMEC was announced, in a way, nobody cared about Palestinians. Nobody thought that the Palestinians are a real player in such mega projects, that somebody should ask them, do you agree? Do you need something? They were totally isolated, but after October 7th, this paradigm has changed. But it changed only for 1 year, because what happened is that after the Hamas-Israel war, also the Houthis in Yemen joined the war, and also Hezbollah in Lebanon joined the war. And Hezbollah, which is an Iranian proxy, it was crystal clear that it will not stop the war against Israel until a ceasefire in Gaza. So there was a new philosophy, a new political philosophy, that if we want some more tranquility, or at least some kind of an order in the Middle East, Palestinians and Israelis should have much, much better relationship. But once Israel has made the pager attack and then the walkie-talkie attack, and then they killed the Hezbollah chief, and also a Hamas chief in Iran itself, Hezbollah begged for a ceasefire with Israel, and it gave up the idea that this ceasefire is only if Israel will sign some kind of ceasefire with the Palestinians, with Hamas in Gaza. Later on, the most important proxy, or let's say client state, to be more precise, of Iran, Syria, Assad regime simply collapsed. And although the Assad regime collapsed because of the domino effect of what happened in October 2023, still the perception was that the Palestinians are not really needed for a big change and a new order in the Middle East. We came back to the same days of IMEC, I2U2, Abraham Accords, etc. Now, one could come to the conclusion that there is no way that during the next tenure of Donald Trump, somebody will push Israel and the Palestinians back to the back to the table to negotiate peace. But of course, I can understand why some people claim so. But I want to offer also a different scenario. If we go back to the Abraham Accords that Israel signed with 4 different Arab countries, we can see that Donald Trump was very disappointed because he felt, and in this sense I believe he was quite right, that Barack Obama got the Nobel Peace Prize for almost nothing, while Donald Trump, during his tenure, he actually was bargaining and achieved a peace between Israel and important Arab countries, and still nobody looked at Donald Trump as the peacemaker. Nobody looked at him as a statesperson. And this is how he sees himself. Now, maybe if Donald Trump comes to the conclusion that even a peace between Saudi Arabia and Israel will not be enough for his image as a great statesperson, although we see that Trump's team is very pro-Israeli. And although we see that even the new ambassador to Israel is a big lover of the settlement project in the West Bank, it was also before in Gaza Strip. And also his team, we can look at it as anti-Palestinian team in a way. But still, I can see a scenario that we see the big paradox that during the Trump tenure, there is a bigger pressure, a bigger American pressure on both Palestinians and Israelis to go back to the table and find a way for a peaceful solution of this long, long conflict. Why? Because Trump feels, and I feel in this sense he's right, that he was the peacemaker. Thanks to him, Israel and 4 Arab countries have a peace. And they have a real peace, not like the peace between Israel and Egypt or Israel and Jordan, which is like quite a cold peace. Israel and the Emirates really have peace. Israelis go as tourists to the Emirates with no problem, also to Morocco. And he felt that there was a bias. He achieved something that nobody could dream of, but still he did not get the Nobel Peace Prize. Now, Donald Trump is quite a narcissistic guy, and he cares about how the global community looks at him. He wants the Nobel Peace Prize. If he comes to the conclusion that even a peace deal between Saudi Arabia and Israel will not give him the image that he wants without a solution of the Palestinian-Israeli conflict, maybe he will push Israel and Palestinians more than Biden, more than Obama, more than democratic presidents. Maybe he will do it. And also he has the clout thanks to the big victory that he had during the last elections. So, of course, it is a long shot. And it is not reflected by the people that he chose for the Middle East and also for his team inside the United States. But Donald Trump is so unpredictable that maybe during his tenure, we will see much more pressure on Israel and the Palestinians.